What is up, internets? Welcome to one of my first online seminars that didn't exist during the pandemic. Super excited to provide this information to you. I've been putting a lot of thought into the new book that's coming out and the new online course that's coming out, and I'm breaking everything down into what I call the timeline of self-defense, which will be the name of the book and the name of the course, which will have a bunch of different things that the book doesn't have, etc., etc. All this stuff is coming out really soon, but this is the part that I wanted to focus on the most. And thank you so much for joining me and paying for this seminar. I greatly appreciate it because this helps me work through some stuff that I haven't worked. And also the time pressure of getting a seminar out always gets my ADHD rolling in a way that lets me produce stuff. So let's get right into the seminar. Thank you so much for joining. This was supposed to be done live, but nobody could make it live. So it's just a recording now. So this seminar is predator selection. And selection is one of the first parts you need to talk about in any kind of self-defense curriculum. How bad guys or bad actors are picking the people they're going to potentially victimize is a huge part of a proactive self-defense strategy. And as if you've been following me recently, I'm super big on the proactive approach because it is so imperative that self-defense is for everyone, not just the young, the fit, and the strong. I'm not saying you shouldn't be fit and not saying you shouldn't be strong, but if self-defense is accessible to everybody, not just martial athletes, we have to put a lot of our focus on the proactive skills. And this is the major stage one of the prevention of violence. So let's get right into it. I want to start this presentation off with a quote, and this is one of my favorite quotes from sci-fi. It comes from Star Trek, even though I'm more of a Star Wars guy. So this is one of my favorite quotes of all time, which is from Captain Jean-Luc Picard, the OG greatest captain out there, though I am more of a Cisco fan. It is possible to commit no mistakes and still lose. That is not weakness, that is life. And I really want you to keep this quote in your head for the entire presentation, because as we talk about selection and deselection and the goals of predators and all of this stuff, I don't want anybody to get into a victim blaming mindset where, oh, if I would have known this earlier, it would have helped, maybe. Or I should tell people or blame people who went through an event because they didn't have this information. You can have all the best information on the planet when it comes to self-protection. You can commit no mistakes and still get picked and still get victimized, et cetera, et cetera. And too many times when working with people and we're debriefing them, they always say stuff like, if I only would have known, if I only would have saw. Maybe that would have helped percentage points, and obviously training will help you become more safe. But this program and any program out there is not an end all or be all. It is just percentage points. So I'm going to refer back this quote quite a bit because as we get into the preventative and predictive model here for selection, don't think it's a silver bullet. You still have to have other skills that are going to intersect with this. So you can commit no mistakes and still potentially lose. So base knowledge, we're going to go over this because we have people entering the seminar from all walks of life and various positions, and I don't want to do any implied information. So we're going to start off with just what predatory violence is. I mentioned earlier that self-defense happens on a timeline. When we talk self-defense, self-protection, conflict management, violence prevention, all of it happens on a timeline. A lot of martial arts tend to focus on what we call moment in time training. All of this stuff has already happened, and now we're in this situation. I'm taking the opposite side of this, is how did we get to this position? I remember when I was teaching in a Taekwondo club, one of my first seminars, we were doing a knife defense seminar, and I asked for questions, and one of the kids said, I have a question. What if there's two guys with guns, and they're pointing guns at you, and you're in an alley with no escape route? What do you do? And my answer was, I have some follow-up questions. How did you get into a situation where there's two guns pointing at you and you're in a environment where you can't escape? So my advice as a joke was pay your drug dealer, right? Because people tend to focus on the worst case scenarios, but they focus only on that moment in time, not all of the things that led up there. And if we can pay attention to selection, which is the number one priority here on our timeline, first part of all the parts I'm talking about in the book and in the course, selection is super important, because if you're not picked, then the rest of this doesn't matter, right? Then it's just fun party martial arts, just things you show your friends and try to look cool at the water cooler, which there's nothing wrong with. So if you can master the selection process, understand how it works, and get very good at deselecting yourself before you even know there was a problem, the odds of you encountering violent crime just drop exponentially. So the essence of this course is, how do the bad guys select me? What can I do to ideally not get selected, with the caveat that people might select you with things you cannot change at all. All of us have things about us that we cannot physically change. I am a white, straight, cis male. There are people on the planet that want me dead, straight up dead. I can't change any of those things on me. So I can still get selected even with all of the best prevention in place. Overview of this, and if you follow my work at all, this is one of the most important things that takes our style of training out from the masses, which is we look at violence in two separate areas: stranger danger or single event, and attacker known or complex events. During this seminar, we're going to address both parts of this: selection on the stranger danger side and selection on the attacker known side. So you need to know which is which, because the tactics for one are different than the tactics for the other. But understand that we talk about the numbers, and we're going to get into it a little bit when we're talking about selection pools. You've heard it before, probably, if you've been in this space and you follow people like myself and Richard Dimitri and Tamara McCracken and all the people that are pushing this proactive agenda, which is super important. Most victims know their attacker ahead of time. This changes dynamically throughout all communities. On average, we say it's 70% of attackers or 70% of victims knew their attacker ahead of time. It changed when we talk about women and kids. It also changed when we talk about indigenous populations, where strangers are more likely to attack that group than any other group. It's about 56% know their attacker ahead of time, and the rest are strangers. Take every stat you hear with a grain of salt. When you dial into specific zones and regions, these things are going to change. But as a general overview, people generally know their attacker ahead of time, but that doesn't mean stranger danger doesn't happen. And if you follow the news, that's what people talk about all the time, right? Somebody getting jumped on a trail is an abnormality. That's newsworthy. Domestic abuse is super common. Bar fights are super common, so that's not going to be on there. So when you're looking at your self-defense strategy in general, please make sure it encompasses both stranger danger and attacker known, because it requires different tactics and proactive skills in order to avoid and diffuse those situations. Predatory violence, and the whole crux of this seminar is we're talking about predatory violence. The way we're going to define it for the purpose of this seminar is anytime somebody is using violence for a secondary gain. So they are using violence to get something from you, and violence is the tool. Okay, they might enjoy the violence, and we'll talk about that with process predators, but the goal of the violence isn't defensive. It isn't reactionary. It's violence with a plan. The person had a secondary goal in mind. I need this or that. We'll talk about potential goals in a second. And I'm going to use violence, coercion, intimidation, blackmail, whatever, to get that thing. So the major difference between predatory violence, which we're talking about all day today, and social violence is often a reaction or a response, right? Somebody cut you off in traffic, somebody spilt your drink, you're pissed off and you become enraged and aggressive, and then the violence happens. Where predatory violence is almost always a plan. The goal was to use violence to get something from you. The four major things that predatory violence tries to gain from you are on the list right here. So the first thing is your property. I might be using violence to take money from you, to take your car in a carjacking situation. I'm using it to take something from you. I could be intimidating you to sign over your car, right? Maybe I'm not carjacking. I'm using coercion at a higher level, but my predation is to take something from you. It's to take from you what you have and give to me. The next is your body. The person might want to use your body for any multitude of reasons. We don't know what that's going to be, whether it's sexual assault, whether they're trying to gain something from you, whether they collect things off the body, but they might be using violence to gain access to your body. They might be using violence to take your life, and they enjoy taking people's lives. We'll talk about that again with process predators, the deepest predator pool. And then last but not least, the one that's not talked about a lot, and it falls more on the attacker known / ongoing victimization, is control. that person might just be trying to gain some kind of control over you, whether it's your time, whether it's your comfortability, whether it's your body, whether it's your finances, right? They might not be doing this in a single serving stranger danger one event kind of way. They could be using control and coercion to repeatedly victimize the person. And this is why we have to look at this from two separate areas, both attacker known and stranger danger, because the tactics change and become more or less sophisticated depending on the outcome. So just remember that most predatory violence is looking for your property, your body, your life, or control of you in some way. Once you can diagnose that, it makes it easier for you to figure out how to stop it, how to de-escalate it, or how to mitigate this in some way. So know that when we're looking at predatory violence, these are the major goals. They can obviously vary, but if we're looking at major groupings, these are the four. One of the things I like to say a lot, just to get the understanding of how predators work, because humans like to both make things infinitely simple and infinitely complex at the same time. I want you to get that every hunter hunts different. So every predator is going to use different tactics and have different goals for their predatory violence. A mugger does not have the same goal structure, tactics, tool use, or strategy that a serial rapist is going to use, that somebody in a domestic abuse cycle is trying to use, or that maybe somebody who's carjacking is going to use, right? So every hunter is hunting different. They could be looking for those major things, right? It could be property, I'm stealing from you. It could be to sexually abuse you. It could be to kill you, but also it could be just to creep you out, right? Office massage guy at work is gaining some kind of control by making you uncomfortable. That jerk at the office that's skirting the HR rules is still a predator. He's a creep, time thief, little jerky predator. He's not the Ted Bundy level serial killer, but he's still using predatory tactics to gain something from you, whether that's control or that sense of control they're getting, or just making you uncomfortable. So when we're diagnosing this, when we're trying to identify what the violence is, remember that every hunter hunts different. There's some examples in here. We have a video coming up where a child molester explains, you've probably seen it, but in case you haven't, it's on this video, where he explains how he selected his potential victims, right? While those are good things to know, predators are going to change. The hashtag #MeToo movement was fantastic. It was a great movement. But also it created the fastest predator evolution I've ever seen. All of the predators who are getting caught now doing creepy stuff in workplace, etc., they are using different tactics than the Me Too generation used. So remember, this is constantly evolving. And as I give you this information now, there might be more information that comes out later. When we talk about types of predators, I go back to Rory Miller's model and I add one, which is survival-based predation, which isn't in the book, but I think he talks about now. Understanding the goal of violence, that secondary gain, what they're trying to get, is going to help you deal with it, also take you off the selection pool, also help you de-escalate, and all the other things you're going to do on this proactive side of self-defense. So the first level of predator we're going to talk is survival-based predation. Survival-based predation comes from someone who is in such a deep need place that they're using violence as a secondary gain to gain access to whatever that deep need is. We can use drowning as an example. Somebody who's drowning will straight up drown you if you grab them for one more breath of air. That is a predatory tactic, using violence, the drowning of you, for secondary gain to get the air that I need. That could be your grandma who baked you cookies every goddamn day. If she is drowning and you don't give her a flotation device, just like Baywatch circa 1999 with those orange things in their hand, they had things in their hand if you weren't paying attention, that floating device is what saves the lifeguard to get the person in, because of that instinctual survival-based predatory mindset that comes out. We also see this with deep drug reactions. People who are on a withdrawal cycle will go through survival-based predation. They won't see you as a person. They will other you. They will be able to use higher levels of violence they could use when they are sober or in a healthy spot. And this is why you hear stories all the time of Sally was the prom queen and she was amazing and volunteered. Then she got into insert chemical here. She changed her personality entirely. And then when she got clean, she came back. So survival-based predation comes from a situation the person is in. It also has the highest level of recovery where people can come out of this. They're not stuck in that cycle all the time. Once the need is met, the predation stops. And if it's an addiction cycle, they go back to normal. Once you get grandma out of the water, she's no longer trying to drown people, right? She doesn't enjoy drowning people, and drowning people doesn't make her money. It was a tactic she needed to survive, but we still consider that predatory violence. The next one on the list is resource-based predation. This is the body, this is the life, this is the property part of the goal set, right? They need something from you. You are the delivery system for whatever resource they're looking for. This might come from a place of need, like a survival-based predator. And please remember, all of these kind of bleed together, and there is some overlap. But resource-based predators are your muggers, they're your carjackers, they're your drug dealers, they're your people that are using violence in order to make some kind of income from it. And then last but not least, we call process predators. And process predators are predators that enjoy the whole event. And this is the deepest pool of predation, and this is where the most variation of predators comes from. The spectrum of this is all the way from creeps, like in the book Creepology, right? Creeps exist on the process predator side, all the way up to your serial killers and your Ted Bundys. These are people that enjoy the process of what they're doing. They harm people because they like to harm people. It is their favorite thing to do, whether it's making you uncomfortable, whether it's forcing you into a bad situation. They enjoy what is going on. Control is a major player in this. As we talked about the things they're looking for: property, body, life, control. Process predators love control. It is one of their favorite things, and they want to keep that control because they enjoy the process of it. This reference is getting a little bit old, but Dexter on the Dexter show is by far a process predator. He enjoys the process of taking out the bad guys. Killing is the vehicle to fill the need or drive he has. It is their favorite thing to do. And this category is where the highest level of recidivism comes, where they continue to predate. Survival-based predation, usually if you get rid of the addiction or the survival situation, the person can go back to not being a predator. Resource-based predation, if they get enough money, they don't need to do that anymore. People can get out of that cycle. But the process, as I mentioned, is their favorite thing to do. All of us have a favorite thing to do. Most of you is probably martial arts. If we made that thing illegal, would you stop doing it? The answer is no. I saw a lot of you during the pandemic doing stuff you should have been doing according to the new laws that kicked in. So understand that process predators are the hardest ones to reintegrate into society. These people really enjoy what they're doing. I'm not saying it can't happen. I'm saying it's the hardest. So understanding the goals of using predatory violence: control, resources, your life or your body. These are the things you're looking for. The types of predators out there are ones that are based off survival. They're using it to survive. They're using it for resources, or they just enjoy what they're doing. Because predators are using violence for secondary gain, there's some parameters that they have that ensure that they can keep doing what they're doing. Number one is they don't want to get hurt. If you go all the way to the animal kingdom, an injured animal has to rest, which means it can't feed itself. Getting hurt is bad for a couple of reasons. Number one, they cannot predate in the way they want to predate. A mugger who breaks his leg isn't able to mug people as easily anymore, so he's not able to do what they're going to do. Number two is injuries equal questions, which takes away the anonymity. Also, when it comes to reports, injuries on a person, physical injuries you can see, makes it easier for the person to get caught. So getting hurt is off the table. So when a predator is going to select somebody, they're going to select somebody who they believe can't harm them. It's very important for you to understand this thought process. They're not going to be picking victims they believe that can hurt them. They're going to select people they believe they can take. Now, when I say take, I don't mean in a 5-round mixed martial arts fight. They could drug you, they could hit you in the back of the head with a brick, but they're going to have some kind of thought process on how to take you out with as little harm to them as possible. And this is where self-defense classes and martial arts classes fail, is they assume that the tactic the predator is going to take is going to be a physical tactic. And that's not necessarily the case. Humans are not on the top of the food chain because we're the strongest animals. It's because we're deceptive, we use tools, we hunt in packs. So understand that them not getting hurt is a priority, which will change their options. Getting to a fist fight with you is going to have injuries. Drugging you, taking you, hitting you, ambushing you, those are stronger tactics for them to use. Number two is they don't want to get caught. Obviously, they don't want to get caught because they want to keep doing the thing that they're doing, right? They are not going to take risks where getting caught is going to happen. And we're going to solidify that with a video coming up later. But understand that a lot of people have this thought process that when you're selected by a predator, the predator is going to be the predator from the movies, this unstoppable, unfeeling, killing machine that will stop at nothing to get you. That is just not the case. Because the predator is looking for secondary gain, they can get that secondary gain from an easier target. So if you put up a fight, if you draw attention, if you create witnesses, the risk goes up for this predator and they're probably going to take off. And we're going to discuss that in detail in the deselection part of the seminar. And last but not least, they want to be able to predate again. So what I mean by that is they want to keep doing what they're doing. On the stranger danger side, they don't want to get hurt or caught. That's going to prevent them from doing it again. But also, even just getting outed, even just losing the tool that they use is going to be bad. But the able to predate again falls more on that complex side, that multiple event, long-term abuse, that attacker known side. This is why you get predators who groom not just the victim, but also the victim's family, friends, workplace, social circles, because they want the safety of being able to do this for as long as possible. This is the problem when it comes to self-defense and self-protection, is that the bad actor chooses every single part of this. If you're the one choosing the weapons, the tools, and the victim, you're the predator. You are the one who is going towards the situation in order to get dominance and control. If we're looking at a pure self-defense angle, the negative to us is that they get to select everything. So let's use this as an example. If we sat down and said, we're going to play a game right now. I know the rules. I know the pieces. I know when the game starts, when the game ends. I know the publisher. I know the guy who wrote the book. You don't get any of that information. Are you going to want to play that game? Probably not, because the advantage is highly on my side. This is the benefit of the predator when it comes to this hunt, is that they know everything. They know who they're going to pick, when they're going to get them, how they're going to do it, everything. And the problem for us as self-defense specialists is that we are in a reactive space the entire time. We have to deal with and adapt to all the things that are happening, which is premeditated by one person on the predatory side, but is reactionary on our side. That's what gets us in trouble. And that's why stopping this at the selection process is going to be your best bet to avoid violence and your safest way to get out of this situation. All right, part 2 of 3 of this seminar, we are talking the actual selection process now. So you understand a little bit more now about how predatory violence works, right? We have 2 factors we have to look at. Number 1 is stranger danger. Number 2 is attacker known. You can make no mistakes and still get selected. And also know that predatory violence is for secondary gain. They want something from you. If you don't have the thing they're looking for, the odds you getting selected are virtually none. But you don't get to know what they're looking for. You don't get to know if they want money or to stalk you, or you look like their 3rd grade teacher, right? You don't know that stuff. So we need to understand the selection process in general. To simplify the selection process, I put selection of 5 separate buckets. There are 5 areas where predators seem to get most of their victims. You could probably add a few more to this, but as a general knowledge base, these 5 areas are where most selection happens. We're going to go over these each individually, but just as an overview, you have open source information gathering. Next is your social circle or groups you're in, family, friends, workplace, etc. Next is environmental. we have target indicators, and we have opportunity. These are the wells where most people will get picked, whether they know it or not. And that's one of the things you really need to understand about the selection process is you're not involved. You are not a part of the selection process. You get picked and you get selected and deselected all the time, and you have no idea it's happening. So we have to understand the selection process to the best of our ability, but also realize that being deselected is far more important than selection. Open source information gathering. Open source information gathering is usually advertised as online, but really it's any information you're giving away for free. So this could be the clothes you wear. This could be info you give out, and this could also be your social media presence. And that's really important to pay attention to. Obviously, social media is a place where people will gain information from you. If you're on TikTok, there's a bunch of TikTok creators. Their whole thing is, oh, you don't think I can find you? And they find you. They find your name, your address, your birth date, just from your social media presence. And these are people that think they have no social media footprint. So obviously, you need to be aware of what's out there. I am firmly of the place that you're not going to keep your social media presence so clean that people aren't going to be able to find you. So our advice on this is, number one, disinformation is great. You don't have to put the city you live in, right? You don't have to put the place you're at. But also, number two is just don't give any real-time updates. Don't tell people where you are in real time, and you will probably benefit. There is a story of a rapper. He had some beats. He was a gangster rapper, and he was doing Instagram Live, and he was rapping, et cetera, and his enemies saw the live, triangulated his position, and then drove up and killed him on his live because the guy was outside in an uncontrolled environment that was identifiable. So don't give real-time updates. That's probably going to help in the selection process, and pay attention to what you put out there. But honestly, at this point in time, gaining information is pretty easy because you can't only worry about what you're putting up. You have to worry about what your friends are putting up, right? So the easy way for me to find somebody online is to go to their very private page, see the people that follow them, go to them and look for tags of you in there. So just the scope of trying to stop you and your friends from doing this is so big. So just try to pay attention to real-time updates. Open source can also help with the approach of a predator. They can come towards you in digital space as opposed to physical space. Much safer for the predator. And one of the tactics they use to do this is something called the boyfriend method. Now, the boyfriend method, if we're talking specifically about human trafficking, and if we're talking about selection, we have to talk about human trafficking because the people are picked for human trafficking. They're picked in the same wells we talk about. And there's lots of methods to get the person to come to an intersection point or to a meeting place in order to kidnap them or do what they're going to do. Boyfriend method, as a great example, is used by individuals or groups. Usually selects marginalized people, and we'll talk about that later on the selection process of when people are picked, etc. But what they do is they leverage the information they've got from open source information gathering, usually social media. Then they promise them great things, and then they make them come somewhere else. So this selection process happens entirely online. The person looks for you. They find somebody in a marginalized community or somebody in a lower socioeconomic community, and they promise them the world. And then the victim comes to them. So the selection is happening there, but this is one of the things that can happen from that selection process is you are picked, then there's contact on the interaction, and then the person get a hold of you willingly. So just pay attention to what you're putting out online and be aware that there is some holes there, and people can gain information a lot easier than you think because it's not just you, it's also your friends. Number two is your social circle. We've talked about this a little bit earlier. 70%, just on average, 70% of people knew their attacker ahead of time. So social circles are the place where these these long-term predators are selecting their victims. And they're looking for certain things to select those victims, which we'll get into later. We'll talk about quite deeply. But it is safe for the person in that circle to pick and choose and learn, because once you're in that area, whether it's your workplace, your family, your friend group, the information is it's free information. I don't have to work too hard for it. There is a benefit to the predator gaining your trust, creating a relationship, and also learning about your social circle, right? We're going to say it a lot of times when it comes to long-term victimization, the three major tips you want to understand is you need self-worth or value, know your worth defending. You need to have strong enforceable boundaries, and you have to have a good community. Those three things will scare away most predators. And I really want you to pay attention to the video I put at the end of this chunk of the seminar, because the child molester, Jack Reynolds, points us out exceptionally. Once you're in the circle, once you have that trust, you can find the threat indicators that you're looking for in order to select your victim. It's in the benefit of the predator, for their safety, to not hurt, not get caught, to become a trusted member of that group, because then they can predate longer, and they have the safety of everybody else enjoying them. So we've talked about this, but I think this always bears repeating. When it comes to sexual assault, we're talking about predatory violence, we have to talk about all different angles: human trafficking, domestic abuse, carjacking, mugging, single event versus complex events. We have to look at all of these things. This is from the United States, because I know a lot of you from other countries. This is from the National Sexual Assault Hotline. They did some data sourcing, and they found that 8 out of 10 rapes, not sexual assaults, not watering this down, 8 out of 10 rapes are committed by somebody known to the victim. And it broke down as follows. 39% were committed by an acquaintance, so your date rape situations. 33% by a current or former partner, right? Because you can rape your partners. In every country now, it's illegal to rape your wife. 1981 is when it was legal in Canada. So I was born in 81. Exactly 42 years ago, you could rape your wife and it was okay. That has changed now. So these are still considered sexual assaults and rapes. 6% were committed by more than one person, so multiple, or the person can't remember. I just read a case where a young woman, she was 14, was so horrific, trigger warning, I guess, but you're in this class, so you should know this information. She was raped, and they found 67 different types of DNA in her, so 67 different samples. That's horrific. That stuff happens. 2.5% are committed by a non-spouse relative, so incest. And then last but not least is 20% are committed by strangers. While we do focus a lot on the attacker known, please know that there are still people who are sexually assaulting people who they don't know, right? There's still 20% of the time it's happening. Also, please take these numbers with a grain of salt. Anytime shame is involved in stats, you have to understand that people aren't going to answer properly. I am very sure that the incest number is higher than 2.5%. That is just what's reported. But for my sample bias and size, it happens way more than it's showing here. But this gives you a general overview that most of the time, people know their attacker. So it benefits the predator, obviously, to be in that social circle. It gets a little rougher when it comes to kids. Right? So if we look here, the majority of teens and children also know their attackers. So this one goes up to like 90% almost. Only 7%, a little over 90%, only 7% of children that are attacked by a stranger, which is interesting to me because we put all of our effort and all of our energy into stranger danger tactics for kids. Oh my God, don't talk to strangers, don't do this, don't take candy, etc. Because we have all these urban myths in our head. We have the news media talking about kids going missing from strangers because that's abnormal. And also we have this thing in our head like razor blades in Halloween candy, which actually never happened. There was never a scare of razor blades. There was a scare, but there was no actual event where razor blades were being put into candy. It was just an urban myth that got taken by the news and blew up. So a lot of us are working off of myth and legend and old bad data when it comes to our threat assessment for our children. I've always been a lot more terrified of sleepovers for my daughter than I was for her going out trick-or-treating, because statistically, the sleepover dad or uncle or mom or whomever is more likely to harm my daughter than any stranger is. And again, I'm not saying it doesn't happen, but it happens way less than people think. This stat blows people's minds. It's why I bring it up in every course, and you should use it in your courses too. 59% are committed by acquaintances, coaches, people in power. And again, we talk to when you hear the horrific Jack Reynolds talk, he used this to his advantage. Being an acquaintance, being a person in the space makes it easier, especially with single parents. I'm not picking on single parents here. I grew up in a single home, but single parents are overwhelmed a lot of the time. So if an adult comes in and says, hey, let me take care of your kid for the night, they're probably going to say yes, not because they're bad parents, but because they need a break because they're human beings. So 59% committed by an acquaintance, 34% committed by a family member. That's high. And then, of course, 7% committed by a stranger. So I really want everyone to understand, if you haven't heard this before, this is a little bit shocking. If you've heard this before, just a friendly reminder, I guess a little bit of an aggressive reminder, that when we're looking at actual violent crime, people you know are far more dangerous than people you don't know. Next is environmental. Environmental factors could just be that wrong place kind of situation, right? You're in a bad bar and somebody picks you because bad people go to bad bars. You are in a choke point. You're walking across a bridge at night and there's people waiting, right? These are environmental factors that are going to pop up, but also be aware there are certain places where you're more likely to run into these. We call these intersection points and selection points. And we're going to use human trafficking again as the major example, because human traffickers are known for selecting people, grabbing them, and taking them. And they're not just putting needles in their neck and putting them in vans like people think. They're using more sophisticated, coercive methods to get them there, whether it's promises or blackmail, right? Maybe they got somebody to send nudes to them, and now they're going to show your family, so you decide to go, right? There's lots of methods that are being used. It's not just your kick, punch, karate stuff, not to pick on karate, but basic intersection points. These are some of the most common, and I think it's important to talk about because these are places people go to all the time. These are the watering holes. These are the places where people know people are going to be, and they can look for the threat indicators that there are, the potential indicators that they are looking for, right? So if they're looking for a victim, because every hunter hunts different, of a certain age, a certain body type, whatever goal they're looking for, these places have those people, and in a lot of times are disenfranchised people. So airports, number one, and we're talking specifically human trafficking here. We're using these as examples for other potential selection points. Airports are one of the biggest ones because people fly in, but also, people fly in to meet human traffickers, but also people just coming on tour. I've been conned in 2 different airports because of cabbies. Airports are a place where people are vulnerable. They're in a new spot. They're isolated from their friends and family. They're doing an adventure, and they're willing to take help a lot easier than they would at home, right? So you're in a vulnerable spot when you're in an airport. For me, because of my travel, I'm exhausted. When I land at an airport, I am so tired that it's very easy for somebody who's awake, sees me coming, to take advantage. And again, there's been 2 cabbies, almost 3, that have taken advantage of me at airports for that exact reason. When we talk about human trafficking, I used to think that it was weird because if you've been to an airport recently, at least in North America, they have stickers on doors and bathrooms on the floor saying, if you think you or somebody's being human trafficked, please call this number. And I used to think before I did the research, this is stupid. If you're being human trafficked, why would the trafficker give you a phone? But if you flew in to meet your boyfriend using the boyfriend method, and you got a bad feeling, went to the bathroom, you would still have your cell phone. So there is a purpose to them. I used to think they were the dumbest things ever. And then I did a little bit of research on it, as I am, right? I have my opinion and then I switch it. That's how Randy works. That's why those are there, because it gives somebody an out just in case, like, oh, this person's giving me a bad vibe and I'm still in public. It's that secondary location that's going to be dangerous. Schools. I used Ted Bundy already, but Ted Bundy used to go to universities and find people and ask the big questions to get the information he needed to hunt them. Bars obviously is a place where people are going to go. Places where people get their minds altered are almost always dangerous. But bars, right? It's where people are getting drugged, people are getting kidnapped, people are getting taken out. Charming predators are taken to secondary crime locations. Bars are a bad one. Exotic bars, obviously strip clubs. This flips it. This is where, so when we talk about bars, we tend to lean towards women being victimized in those areas. We talk about exotic bars. This is where men are victimized, right? This is where the muggers jump them outside so they don't tell their wives. This is where the women drug them and take their stuff or leave them or blackmail them or take pictures or steal their phone, right? There's lots of victimization that can happen in these exotic bars. Massage parlors might not be legal everywhere you're at, but here in Canada, we have massage parlors where sex workers work. And that is a normal everyday thing. That is a place where these people can get abducted, especially when it comes to sex workers. They are not seen as people. They're already othered, and predators have a much easier time harming people that are othered. The internet, huge one. We already talked about open source information gathering, but the internet's a place where people congregate and you can find anything anywhere. Reddit's a horribly dark place. 4chan is ridiculous. Hitchhiking is not as popular as it used to be. Everybody's in hashtag van life, but still a place where people can get grabbed up. And then last but not least is family members, right? An interception point is families at family reunions. There are people that actively sell off their own family members, so you need to pay attention to that. Next, we talk about target indicators. And target indicators are things that you are giving off, whether intentionally or unintentionally, that might draw the attention of a predator. Now, again, there's no victim blaming here. We're going to talk about the risk reward and how victim blaming on all this is stupid as hell. But if every hunter hunts different, you cannot control what a person is looking for in their hunt. So we're going to pay attention to things that could potentially lead to being selected, but then the deselection process would kick in anyways. When we're looking at the stranger danger side, the predator is looking for somebody who is distracted. They're looking for somebody who is potentially injured. They're looking for somebody who is isolated. They're looking for someone that they can get control of as quick as possible, right? So those would be target indicators. On the long-term side, they're looking for people who are meek. They're looking for people who speak up for themselves. They're looking for people who are poor, right? To pick on religion a little bit, human traffickers and religious missionaries talk to the same groups of people who are poor and disenfranchised. And they try to bring them into the flock or try to traffic them, right? People who are in a bad economic place are far more vulnerable than the rest of the population, right? So meek, unorganized people who are discombobulated or people who are in low social economic area are people that are going to get selected more likely. So obviously we talk about deselection. We'll talk about getting rid of these in your everyday life, but these are just some of the general ones that they're looking for. So target indicator could be your selected, right? Person's not paying any attention to you whatsoever. And you look, your headphones are in, right? We're stranger danger. Like, okay, that person now is on the potential victim list. Last but not least is opportunity. And I think this is one that people forget about. There are just crimes of opportunity. There are times where you might not have been selected and then the environment changes and now you can potentially become a victim, right? So maybe you're in the bar and it's payday and nobody wants to pick a fight with you or rob you, but then you pull out a wad of $100 bills and they're like, wait a minute, now I'm drawing attention. I'm drawing attention from potential predators who might use this time to attack, hurt, harm me. So going through all of these again, don't forget there's 5 kind of pools we talk about. Open source information gathering, social circles, events, workplace, environmental target indicators and opportunity. Open source is information you give out, whether in person or online. Social circles are any group of people where predators could weasel their way in to select victims. Environmental factor are just places where people gather, those watering holes. Target indicator things you are presenting, and you can't control those. You can't control if you're selected. Maybe the person's looking for brunette and you just have brown hair. You can't control that. And then last but not least is opportunity. If they have the opportunity to take advantage, they might. Crimes of opportunity happen all the time. So on that note, we're going to watch a video. I'm going to trigger warning you here again. It is a very disturbing video. It is a 2-minute, roughly 2-3 minute clip of a serial child molester whose name is Jack Reynolds. This is available on YouTube. We also have it right here. You can just clip this out. You have access to this video. It's yours now. He goes over his selection process, and you're going to hear some of the things ring true in what we've talked about. We are covering a wide berth of topics, all predatory violence to the best of my ability. This is a direct look at what a child molester is looking for.
How did you get them alone?
Grooming. I would check out their family situation. I would check out their clothing to see how well they were, financially. I would check out their social interaction with other kids. When we were on the ballparks or on the gym floor, I would make sure which ones I wanted to molest. I would give them special attention, congratulate them, talk to them when I know that I would never be allowed to talk to anybody else. You know, aside from everybody, I would give them the attention that an official is not supposed to give anybody. And it made them feel like, wow, he's paying me attention. You know, it is a direct form of grooming.
Were there certain characteristics that you looked for in children before molesting them?
In children, yes, but more I also looked at their families. If I thought the father was a threat, I would not approach the child. If I thought that the child had friends that he would tell, I would not approach him. If I thought the child had friends that were in the same capacity he was, I would approach him. For the simple fact that if I could molest him, I could lure him into believing, grooming him into believing that he would enjoy it. And therefore, I could manipulate him into having his other friends come and be molested by me as well.
So perhaps a child that doesn't really have a whole lot of friends, maybe not really a strong family, things like that.
Yes, no spiritual values, weak in education, you know, needs help in many ways, even from split parenting, you know, has a mother who may be having problems with the family, you know, well, here comes superhero in to help out, you know, wow, well, thank you very much. No problem. You ever need me to take them away for the night so you can have a night out? No problem. It works.
So, horrific thing. I really want you to understand that, as you heard him say, he was just fishing for everybody. He would look at certain things he looked for, weak family units, because this is that long-term predation, right? This is the attacker known. This is somebody who is ingratiating themselves to do this multiple times, right? That's that 70 to 80% that we're talking about, that acquaintance that can get access to the child. These tactics work exactly the same as they do with any other kind of long-term predation. They're looking for certain people. I really want you to pay attention. He said he wasn't just looking at the victim, he was looking at the victim's social circle. So like I said earlier, value, you need to have self-worth, education, that kind of stuff, like he mentioned, looking for weakness in there, ideally getting yourself into a good position. Then we have the community surrounding him, and also the kid's boundaries, both the parents and the kid, right? He said he'd come in like a superhero. This is a very common tactic that people use all of the time that we need to be aware of. So I want you to understand, when it comes to the selection process, you don't have any control if you're selected. So take off the board all the advice of don't wear a ponytail, what were they wearing, et cetera, et cetera. That all goes out the window. We're going to talk about that in a second here on the last part of this seminar. But you have to realize, if you are selected for some reason, it's your job to show them they made the wrong fucking choice. So number one is don't get selected, right? Do the things we said earlier, and we'll talk about deselection here for the rest of the seminar, right? But values, boundaries, community, walking with purpose, all the things we're going to talk about, these are important factors to not get selected. But if you are selected, you didn't do anything wrong. You don't know what this person is capable of or what they're even looking for. So get out of your head what you should have, could have, would have done. And now get to a place of, you fucking picked me. That was a wrong goddamn choice. And then we're going to talk about making a scene, all of those sort of things going on. There are proactive ways, which are the subtle ways, the ways you act all the time to make sure you're not selected or deselected if somebody does pick you. And then there's active ways on how to stop it. We're going to cover both of those in the next part. All right, deselection. This is the last chunk of the seminar. So hopefully you're enjoying this so far, taking a lot of notes. Again, we're not doing this live like I thought we were going to. So you have questions and you pay for this, feel free to reach out to me, ask as many questions as you want. I will clarify. I'll give you a ton of extra time because that was the initial goal, but most people just couldn't attend it live. Actually, nobody but one person. So I decided to go this way. Deselection, I think, is a very important concept. And why I think it's a very important concept is that it takes away the victim blaming onus on this. Every hunter hunts different. You don't know. You cannot spend your time trying to collate every single thing a predator is possibly looking for. If you tried to do that, you would never leave your house and you would go crazy. Self-defense is about making you bold, not terrified. It's about educating you on the dangers of the world so you can navigate it on your own, as opposed to freaking you out and trying to sell you lessons, at least in my opinion. So why I think the deselection concept should be a little bit more vocal in the self-defense space is because you can't control if you're picked. You can't control if you look like somebody's teacher. You can't control if you're wearing red that day and you happen to bump into somebody who likes red, right? Like you can't control those things. And spending my entire life freaking out about that is going to put me in a hyper paranoid state. What you can focus on is deselection, making sure that if you do catch their attention, they do approach you, that the second they get you, they realize this was a bad idea and they're going to go look for somebody else. And the way I like to explain this is very simply. If you go fishing and you cast your line into the water for a fish, and you get a fish that's really tough and it gets away, you don't dive in the water for that specific fish again. You cast your line and look for another fish. That's what deselection is. You got picked and caught, but now you were too much trouble. This is not the thing they were looking for, and they're going to move on. This is a micro solve to a macro problem, but that's what self-defense is, making you as capable as possible to protect yourself. So let's get into deselection. I want you to understand that every predator is using a risk-reward model in their head to see if the person they've chosen as a victim is the proper victim. Remember, going all the way back to the beginning, right? We talk about how predators don't want to get hurt, they don't want to get caught, and they want to be able to predate multiple times, as many times as possible. That's where the risk reward comes in. If I pick this person, are they going to hurt me? Are they going to out me? Or are they going to impede my ability to do what I am trying to do over and over again? You cannot lower the reward so low that you will not get selected. Homeless people rob homeless people. Women in burqas get raped all of the time. I know women who wore effectively tiny little sweatbands over their genitals who did not get assaulted at all. So we have to lose the reward side. Or what were they wearing? What were they doing? Obviously, some onus on that. Be aware of your space, be aware of your environment, try not to get too messed up in dangerous places. But there are people that wear almost nothing who do not get assaulted. There are people that cover themselves up and get assaulted. There are people with nothing and only one thing who still get robbed. So we cannot lower the reward so low that I won't get picked. So all we can do is raise the potential risk. And the rest of this seminar is talking about raising the potential risk. So if you already have this mindset, drop it. Doesn't matter what their hairstyle was, doesn't matter what they're wearing. You need to pay attention to raising the risk, not lowering the reward, because we cannot lower the reward low enough that people aren't going to select you. It just doesn't happen. And again, you don't know how the person is hunting. There is a common response to grievous sexual assault where the person who's assaulted will gain a bunch of weight in order to believe that they're unattractive, they will be safe. There might be a hunter that's looking for heavy set people. So you cannot waste your time trying to figure that out. You can only raise the risk to show the person you are not to be messed with. So we're going to talk about stranger danger first and then attacker known second. Here are some of the major tools that people can use to be deselected in a stranger danger mentality. These are your very common, like 10 tips on Facebook on how to avoid being selected. They do work in the stranger danger context. So do pay attention and do teach them. I'm seeing a switch now where people aren't even talking about stranger danger anymore. That is still existing in a lot of areas, 30% of the time. And also, if you have good self-worth, if you have good boundaries, a good community, you're only going to be selected by strangers because you have all the attacker known stuff dealt with. So please don't ignore it because it's a smaller percentage, but we're swinging too far the other way. First, we were all stranger danger. Then now we're swinging too far to attacker known. Both are necessary. So please pay attention to both. So on the proactive side of this, so proactive being soft skills, proactive being things you do before an event, when somebody's going to select you, these are things that are already in play. Number one is awareness. And I can't stress this enough. If I'm a predator looking for short-term gain, a single event of violence, I'm going to pick somebody who can identify me, who's not paying attention, who I can grab and run, right? You've seen videos online where people are holding their phone, the phone gets grabbed, they run off, and the person's gone, they don't know what happened. That's just not paying attention. Awareness is always going to be important, and it does a couple of things. The body language you present when you're being aware shows you are a harder target, quote unquote, because you're actually looking around and paying attention to stuff. So this is where situational awareness really pays off in dividends. It really is important here because the act of staying curious, right? Don't just look for the bad, also look for the good. The act of just paying attention to your space already raises the risk of somebody trying to ambush you or grab you, right? They're going to look for an easier target. So awareness will help both with not getting selected and also just seeing cool stuff in your world. So stay curious, practice situational awareness. You can be on your phone in a safe space, but anytime you're in a transitional place in between your house, the car, the workplace, your car, in a park, try to keep your wits about you to the best of your ability. One headphone in is also fine. You don't have to change your entire life. Every context will be different, but awareness is important. Number two, this is something going around the internet. It's called organized quality. There was a survey done it was on Psychology Today, and they interviewed a very small sample size, a painfully small sample size of people, and who attacked strangers. And they said, what do you look for? And the assessment they came to was organized quality or people that had disorganized quality were people that were selected for victimization. I like this term organized quality. I put it in quotes here on the presentation because it's very ambiguous. But I want you to understand what organized quality means is, how you look. Are you put together? Are you moving in a good manner? And what I mean by a good manner is you don't have to become a giant weightlifting bodybuilder for physical deterrence, but can you move through your space? Are you a dancer? Do you do some kind of physical sport or activity that lets you move in a coordinated manner? The more coordinated you are, the more calm and relaxed you are in the space, and the more you're paying attention, the less likely you are to be selected by a predator on the stranger danger side. And then the last part of it is with purpose. Do whatever you're doing with purpose. If you're walking, if you're taking pictures, if you're running, do with purpose, right? Be too busy to be approached. That's a great way to avoid these contact points. Now, if you're looking to avoid this entirely, this is great. If you're out there looking to make friends, you're obviously going to change these dynamics. I'm taking a very extreme view here to give you the top tips of avoidance for that selection process, right? So awareness, pay attention to your surroundings. It's always good, especially in transitional spaces. You can be on your phone in your house. You don't have to be in condition yellow, but in those transitional spaces in between two spots, make sure you're paying attention. Organized quality. Walk, be loose, do mobility, be calm, don't be stressed out, know what you're doing, know the purpose of it, have some information so you look confident and not out of place. That will draw less attention on the stranger danger side. On the attacker known side, I've already mentioned this, but I'm going to keep mentioning it. It's the tagline for my business. There are three major factors that are going to stop predators from selecting you, as you heard from the child molester in the video earlier, right? So number one is personal value. You need to have self-worth. You need to know you're worth defending. I know I hammer this so hard, but I've worked with so many people who've gone through horrific situations because they didn't believe they had the right to defend themselves. They didn't think they were worth defending. If you don't have self-worth, self-esteem, if you don't have value, everything else we're doing is pointless because you will be selected and they will be successful. You need to know that people aren't allowed to mess with you. You need to know that people aren't supposed to do this stuff to you. The next thing is boundary setting. And boundary setting is two really cool effects. There's an active effect where you tell people stuff. There's also a proactive effect, which is boundary setting halo. That is, you've set boundaries so many times that everybody sets your boundaries for you. You're the person at work that doesn't stay late. New boss comes in and they're like, I'm going to ask Bill to stay late. And they're like, whoa, Bill does not stay late. And they will set your boundaries for you. So you having strong boundaries both stops the immediate effect, but also word gets around in this attacker known situation where you're not the person to be messed with. So setting boundaries is so very effective when it comes to self-defense, especially on the attacker's known side. Not only will you teach them how to treat you, You also teach the community how you like to be treated, and they might do the work for you, which is awesome. Last but not least is community. Building a community that keeps you safe is important. Having people you trust and know will also help not allow predators into those social circles. Being at a place with a good human resources policy means you ideally will hire less predators potentially in the place, and they will be eliminated as soon as possible. Predators hide in a lot of places. If you're on my Patreon, there's a series of 6 parts, 6 30-minute videos where we talk about how predators hide, where they hide in the sex community, in the anime and festival community, in the workplace, right? If you have a good community with good parameters, good rules, good communication, the odds of a predator hiding in that space are very low. This is a double-edged sword, though, because community might be the place where predators are. You might have grown up in a cult. If you listen to my podcast, we have 2 episodes with people who are in cults, one with Dag in season 1, one with Maggie in season 2. In self-defense, I personally believe, and I think you should spout that your boundaries create your community, not the other way around. So if you're in a place where you feel like your boundaries are being violated, and it's healthy, because not all boundaries are healthy, you've heard of my course, then you need to switch that community. Your boundaries dictate the community. This is what I like. These people like this. These are my built community. You might have that naturally. But if you come from a place of toxicity, your community should not be setting your boundaries. It's a hard thing to understand, but if you get your head wrapped around it, when you're building a family or community of choice, your boundaries are what select those people. They will self-select by you setting boundaries. So value, boundaries, community, those 3 things are the easiest things to do and the highest potential for stopping predators from selecting you on that long-term violence situation, on that attacker known spot. Active deselection happens in both areas. An active deselection without going physical, because that could also happen, right? If somebody grabs you, you mess them up, that's fine. But on just this selection part where they've approached you, you're in this social space, not this physically engaging space, active boundary setting is going to be your number one thing. If you're too much of a problem with active boundaries, the odds of you getting picked or them staying, because you've already been picked, the odds of them staying there are low. Deselection is very high thanks to boundary setting. You become a problem. They're only going to put up with so much. They might make it personal when it comes to cases of stalking and stuff, but that's after the initial setup, right? The stalker picked you for some reason. They follow you for some reason. Boundaries are going to be definitely one of the first stages of stopping that from happening. Number 2, especially in the stranger danger thing, but in anywhere, this could be the workplace on the long-term thing. This could be the family reunion. Make a scene. I cannot stress this enough. And maybe you don't like the language on that, but you want to draw attention to what is happening. The more you can create good witnesses, the less likely you are to stay selected. The more eyes on the predator, the more eyes on the person doing the thing, the higher the risk goes up instantaneously. It doesn't matter as much the environment. If you can't physically fight back, creating a scene and drawing witnesses will be one of the most important things you can do. And if that doesn't work, you want to be more polite. A proper exit is super important. Now, to hammer down this point of making a scene, I have one final video I want to show you before we wrap this up. Thank you so much for joining me, where there is a woman who was selected by a predator. He has a firearm, and she makes a scene and ends it. Let's take a look.
This woman was on her way to see a band playing when she was attacked, but the predator messed with the wrong woman.
I just said, you're just going to have to shoot me because I'm not going to get in the car with you.
Cherokee Broderson says the drama began when a total stranger sidled up to her and obnoxiously asked her for a date. She tried to ignore him, and that set him off.
He held the gun up to my chest and he said, "Get in the car, bitch."
When she refused, he fired into the air. A fierce struggle erupted. Broderson spoke to Les Trent.
You were not going to get into that car.
No, because I knew it would just all be over. I mean, it was just going to get way worse from there. It was already scary enough.
Then Broderson was viciously pistol whipped. She falls, but keeps screaming. Finally, he's had enough. The predator runs off, leaving Broderson slumped on the sidewalk, but relieved she's alive.
I feel like I was just too much work for him.
The interior designer says the horrific attack happened just 2 blocks from her home in Salt Lake City.
I think he's just going to do it again because he didn't get what he wanted.
So let's take a look at this. This woman was in an air cast. So that would be a threat indicator, right? Or target indicator, rather. That would be a target indicator. Oh, look, there's a cast. This person can't run away. They were isolated. It was dark out. They were paying attention-ish. This person then selected them, went there. So she has been picked now. He grabbed her, number one, tried to coerce her without anything. Even though he had a firearm the whole time, decided, I'm not going to use the firearm yet. Asked her for a date to get in the car. She said no. He then pulled out the firearm to intimidate and make her comply. She had the presence of mind. She knew, do not go to a secondary location. Do not do that. So she started making a scene. This person, she was injured. He had a firearm. He was larger than she was. He had the isolation, and he still ended up running away just because she was screaming. This is why I say make a scene. The more attention you can get, the higher you can raise the risk in this situation, the more likely the person is to go get that other fish. I shared a story recently on my TikTok channel as well, where there was an old woman who was attacked in her home, and she started reaching and screaming and said, "Where's my gun? Where's my gun?" Even though there wasn't even a gun present, the predator still took off. He deselected her because the risk raised so high. The reward can't go lower, only the risk can. So I want you to understand, when we're looking at this stuff, that selection is such an important process when it comes to self-defense. And if you can master the deselection process and how you people are potentially picked, you can stop violence right before it starts. This is not 100%. Remember, you can make no mistakes, and you can commit no mistakes and still lose, right? But understand that there are a ton of things that you can do before things go physical. And these are things that every single person can do, no matter age, culture, gender, speed, strength, injury. These proactive skills will help keep you safe in bad situations. If a woman in a cast in the dark can scream her way out of potentially being grabbed by a person with a gun and 2 fully functioning feet, we need to start paying attention to the selection process. All right, everybody, I hope you gained a lot of information from this video. There is a ton more like this coming. I want to do one of these for each of the modules. This will become an online course, like I said, at some point. And this is all going into the book, the new book coming out, Timeline of Self-Defense, ideally August 1st. We're getting there. If you want more of this information, get a hold of me. If you want me to run this class for your group or whatever, you can get a hold of me as well. We can do it online or in person. But please don't ignore how predators select potential victims. There is a lot of low bar for entry self-protection tools in here that can help prevent you from ever having to throw a punch. If you have any other questions, obviously get a hold of me. All my socials are right here. And thank you so much for following me, and we'll talk to you all very soon.